Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenas tardes en el Reino Unido, muy buenos días en México. Nos da mucho gusto estar aquí para la presentación de la tercera estudiante que realizó su titulación por el programa de impulso a la titulación por actividades académicas en el extranjero, Nayla García, a quien nos da mucho gusto recibir. El Centro de Estudios Mexicanos de la UNAM en el Reino Unido es una oficina que tiene la UNAM para fomentar la internacionalización en la educación superior con las universidades británicas. Entonces, nos da mucho gusto recibir estudiantes que reciben la beca de parte de la Dirección General de Cooperación e Internacionalización, la DGESI, para poder realizar este tipo de actividad. Muchas gracias, Nayla, por estar aquí y muchas gracias, Carla, miembro del equipo de UNAM Reino Unido, quien hará la presentación. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctora, y de nuevo bienvenidos a todos. Muchas felicidades, Nayla, por la conclusión de tu trabajo. Y bueno, me voy a permitir presentarte. Nayla García Urieta es egresada de la licenciatura de Relaciones Internacionales por la Facultad de Ciencias, Políticas y Sociales de la UNAM y también graduada de la Facultad de Estudios Superiores de Acatlán en el diplomado Comercio Exterior. En cuanto a práctica profesional, ha colaborado en el análisis y comunicación de asuntos internacionales relacionados con temas de competencia económica y regulación de los sectores de telecomunicaciones y radiodifusión en México en el Instituto Federal de Telecomunicaciones. Y en el ámbito académico se ha desempeñado como profesora adjunta de la UNAM en las materias de Europa, Política Internacional Contemporánea y Construcción de México en el Mundo I. Dentro de sus temas de interés se encuentran la cooperación internacional, el comercio internacional, los estudios regionales, Europa, así como la ciencia y la tecnología en relaciones internacionales. Bueno, Nayla, pues te cedo la palabra para que inicies con tu presentación.
Gracias, Carla. Primero me gustaría empezar agradeciendo al Centro de Estudios y a la doctora Ana Elena por la oportunidad de compartir un poco de lo que aprendí en Londres. Entonces, si está bien, comencemos con la presentación. I'll switch to English for this presentation. So, thank you. Next slide, please. The presentation will be divided into 6 parts. To begin with, we need to know what international cooperation is. Next slide, please. Okay, so in Raphael Skalduch's words, international cooperation refers to any relationship between international actors aimed at the mutual satisfaction of interests or demands through the complementary use of their respective powers in the development of coordinated and/or solidarity-based actions. But the importance of its analysis is not a recent development. International cooperation has historically been characterized as a relevant object of study in the discipline of international relations, thanks to the continuous debate on the nature of state dynamics, becoming one of the essential elements of the international system. In consequence, there is no unified or permanent criterion. The evolution of its interpretation, conceptualization, and institutionalization has been subject to a constant process of construction that obeys a wide range of motivations, preference, and predominant objectives of an specific stages of world history, resulting in the formation of a heterogeneous network of actors, organizations, modalities, dimensions, mechanisms, and institutions, of course. Next slide, please. Well, the most significant change occurred from the 1990s onwards when research on international cooperation began to contemplate a wider range of actors, both public and private, not only at the global level, but also at national, regional, and local levels. For example, companies, civil society organizations, social movements, universities, among others. Due to the spread of diseases, drug trafficking, the intensification of migratory flows, terrorism, of course, and international trade and climate change. These issues have gone from being exclusive to certain states to having international repercussions. The theoretical underpinning was provided by pluralism and complex interdependence through the assumptions of authors such as Robert Johann, Joseph Nye, and Robert Axelrod, who stressed the diversity of ways in which countries can relate to each other, emphasizing that not all of them are subject to states, either because they lack the capacity or because it is costly in economic, political, and social terms. Under this logic, the absence of a state's will to encourage cooperation and resolve common problems can lead to the appearance of external and internal conflicts, together with the loss of influence, stability, and power on the international stage, which would imminently constitute a threat to its very survival. In specific, the theoretical proposal was to affirm that international cooperation generates a condition of mutual dependence derived from the reapproachment and constant contact between two or more actors, separating itself from the idea of that its exercise and impact are based on hierarchy. In this way, international cooperation experienced a multidimensional redefinition of its approach that allowed it to include issues such as education, tourism, trade, environment, medicine, human rights, gender equality, science and technology, to name a few. In addition to projecting itself in different directions and scopes, it made possible the creation of coordinated responses with the power to transcend state limitations. Years later, institutional liberalism and evolved meaning of the liberalism paradigm argued that institutions promote, improve, and increase the permanence of international cooperation over time because institutions, both national and international, determine the actions and procedures in international cooperation and their level of success and failure according to their persuasive effect. This theory in particular was used as the basis for the development of the research I made. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Well, international cooperation can be classified in various ways depending on the criteria used. The common purpose is to facilitate understanding and an analysis of the ways in which they interact within international system. The most recurrent are according to 1, the nature of the stakeholders, 2, the number of stakeholders involved, and 3, the purpose or scope of action. Also, it is important to point out that international cooperation in practice does not exempt the combination of the different categories. On the nature of the stakeholders and in the frame of globalization, the international scenario has been characterized as heterogeneous, complex, and interdependent. In consequence, it has been subject to a proliferation of new elements and realities that have given way to the emergence of non-state actors that take advantage of these new places of power from horizontal and cooperative logics, whose impact diversifies the practice of international cooperation, but without putting an end to the leading role of the state. In this category, there are 3 main groups: public, private, and mixed. The first refers to all actors that are affiliated with governments and governmental institutions. As such, their behavior is dictated by the parameters set by the foreign policy, and they conduct themselves within the framework of international cooperation treaties. For example, governments itself at national, local, and subnational level, cooperation agencies, international organizations, and institutions or public university, among others. The second brings together all that is included or excluded, from the previous one. In short, those outside the reach of the government. Their actions are aimed at satisfying institutional and personal objectives, embodied in private agreements complementary to government ones, given that they cannot operate outside the law. This category includes non-governmental organizations, business, social collectives, foundations, and philanthropic institutions, trade unions, private universities, to name a few. And the third category concentrates a mix of both public and private actors. Regarding to the classification, depending on the number of actors involved, its importance lies in the dimension and nature of the relations between the participants. The most common are the bilateral and multilateral level. For example, involving two states and a group of countries concentrated in a forum, organization, or international institution through programs or projects. In relation to the purpose of scope or of action, as I mentioned before, in recent years, international cooperation has been distinguished by its dynamism and adaptability to the changing needs of the international environment, incorporating a holistic approach by virtue of specialization as a result of the growing interest in multiple areas and problems on the part of the different actors. Among the aspects that can be found in this classification are technical cooperation, political, environmental, financial, educational, cultural, trade, security and defense, gender, scientific and technological, legal, economic, to name a few. All right. After the introduction of the concept, it can be identified that the cooperation between Mexico and the UK is bilateral, of course, in nature, and involves public actors. The research focused on the economic field due to its orientation towards SMEs in general, and the preponderance in the theoretical and practical field. Next slide, please. Okay, so the Mexico and UK relationship is one of the longest standing for the Mexican government in historical terms. So tracing its genesis is an interesting task. It can be traced back to the early 18th century with the first diplomatic contacts guided on the one hand by the British government's desire to stop American and French advances in the region, the establishment of trade ties that would allow it to expand its market, and the safeguarding of a privileged place in international trade. The motivation for Mexico lay in its claim to recognition of its emancipation from the Spanish Empire, as well as becoming the subject of loans and credits. All of this was aimed at achieving greater stability and economic liquidity in the context of the vulnerable situation the Mexican nation was going through because of the war and the continuous internal upheavals. In this sense, authors such as Josefina Zoraida Vázquez date the beginning of the rapprochement between Mexico and the United Kingdom to October 1823, with the appointment of a commission by George Canning, Britain's foreign minister, made up of Lionel Hervey, Charles O'Gorman, and Henry Ward. The main purpose of it was to report on political and economic conditions in Mexico. In consequence, in March 1824, Mexico appointed Mario Michelena as envoy extraordinary and minister plenipotentiary. Also, Vicente Rocaforte as secretary, and Thomas Murphy as interpreter. The mission was to request recognition of the independence, the issuance of a loan, to appeal for British support as an interlocutor in important events for Mexico, the purchase of weapons, the establishment of a defensive treaty against the Holy Alliance, and in a commercial treaty. Also, the United Kingdom had granted de facto recognition to Mexico since December 1824. It was not until 1825 that this was made official with the signing of the Amity Commercial and Navigation Treaty in December 1826, and its ratification in July 1827. The first treaty signed with a power nation in Mexico's history. Months later, Charles O'Gorman was appointed British consul in Mexico, and Thomas Murphy was appointed head of the Mexican delegation in London. At the end, for Mexico, the treaty was useful in political terms because it regularized the country's international presence on the world stage, as well as laying the foundations of legality and legitimacy to prevent future European attempts at reconquest. For the British Empire, however, the benefits were mainly in the economic sphere. That is, also in theory, the agreement inaugurated a phase of commercial reciprocity between the two countries. In practice, Britain's trade with Mexico was unilateral. Let's remember, at that time, Mexico mining had the highest level of silver production in the world. In this respect, the treaty gave the British government, traders and businessmen, preferential access to the dynamics of the exploitation of the Mexican extractive industries through the entry of capital via loans and direct investment, specifically in silver, which allowed the financing of the power's participation in military conflicts. As a result, the mining industry came under Britain's monopoly. Therefore, Great Britain had an unavoidable preponderance in Mexico in its first stage as a sovereign nation until the end of the 1950s. It is important to know that being so extensive, the relationship has gone through different stages, both positive and negative, which have given rise to cooperative and hostile interactions for a wide range of reasons. Next slide, please. All right. Among the moments of tension were those triggered by the conditions and impacts of the Mexican government's debt contract with Britain in the early days of its independent life. Also, the British government stance of neutrality in the Mexican-American War, Britain's breakdown in diplomatic relations after the suspension of foreign debt payments in 1861, and President Lázaro Cárdenas' decision to nationalize the Mexican oil industry in 1938. However, the relationship has generally been characterized by exchange and cooperation. For example, the offer of British help as a mediator at tense moments for the Mexican government with its foreign counterparts. For example, in the French intervention in Mexico in 1838, also known as the Peace Reward. In addition to Mexican participation in the Universal Exhibition in London in 1821, and Mexico's inclusion in the Allied bloc in World War II. Next slide, please. In the historiographic review, it was noted that over time, cooperation efforts have been formalized through the conclusion of agreements, treaties, and conventions of various kinds. For example, the Treaty for the Extradition of Criminals, the Convention on Cultural Cooperation, the Basic Convention on Scientific and Technical Cooperation, the Agreement on the Promotion and Reciprocal Protection of Investments, the Agreement on Mutual Recognition of Studies, Diplomas, Degrees, and Academic Qualifications in Higher Education, and the Agreement on the Mutual Recognition and Protection of Designations for Spirit Drinks, to name a few. Next slide, please. But also through initiatives, projects, and programs, such as the Alliance for Sustainable and Inclusive Growth, the UK-Mexico Prosperity Fund, the UK Newton Fund, the UK International Climate Finance Program, and the Chevening Scholarship Program. This last program has been promoted since 1983, by the British Embassy in Mexico for 1 year of master studies at any UK university, and a total of 3,000 Mexican students have benefited from it. Next slide, please. One of the results of this bilateral cooperation closest to the nationals of both countries is the visa. Mexicans and British nationals are exempt from requiring a visa for short stays of up to 6 months for tourism, visits to relatives, or on business, transit to a third country, or to study for less than 180 days. In specific, this has resulted in the UK being the fourth largest tourist source market for Mexico, with an annual flow of 580,000 tourists. In 2023, the economic revenue for the Mexican government was more than $427 million. Overall, between 2022 and 2023, 1,675 Mexican students joined British educational institutions, making the UK the 6th most requested country by the student community in Mexico for postgraduate studies and the second for master's degrees. Next slide, please. Okay, well, the Mexico-UK cooperation has permeated beyond the federal level. The UK government has collaborated with more than 60 municipalities in Mexico in the project Digital Transformation Technology-Based Municipal Development. The main objective has been to incorporate and raise awareness of the issue in the improvement of public services through practices and strategies in terms of data, digitization, GovTech, new technologies, and cybersecurity. Additionally, it has supported Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey with technical assistance to electrify Metrobus, trolleybus, and cable bus units. Next slide, please. Another example of the cooperation are the institutions, agencies, groups, associations, and organizations whose activities strengthen and deepen binational cooperative work. Among them are the Center of Mexican Studies, UNAM UK, the Mexican Chamber of Commerce in Great Britain, MEXCC, the Red Global MX, United Kingdom, Redes México, British Mexican Society, México Amigo, Colibrí Mexicano Fountains, Amistad Británico-Mexicana, SU Mexican Society of the London School of Economics, and the Society of Mexican Students in the United Kingdom, MEXOC UK. Next slide, please. Currently, diplomacy and the bilateral relationship continue to evolve in response to changes in the international scene and the priorities of both countries, resulting in the convergence of a series of interests that give rise to the creation of a broad agenda that encompasses political, economic, social, cultural, environmental, tourism, sports, educational, technological, scientific, health and security issues, among others. However, the economic and trade area continues to be one of the priorities for both nations, and this is not in vain. The UK is Mexico's sixth largest trading partner worldwide. It is also the eighth largest source of foreign investment in the country, with more than 3,000 British companies in Mexico, focused on sectors such as engineering, food and drink, agriculture, retail, education, health and care, security and defense, financial services, music, advertising, fashion, you name it, employing approximately 50,000 people. In the period from January to September 2023 alone, British foreign direct investment amounted to $1.3 billion. Since 2010, trade between the two countries has increased at an annual rate of 7%. In 2021, trade flows between the two nations amounted to more than 5.1 billion. In 2022, Mexico's exports to the UK were estimated at $2,673 million, of course, while imports were $2,557 million. Sorry. Next slide, please. Also, trade between Mexico and the United Kingdom is growing year by year. Cooperation in the commercial sphere is not limited to the mere transaction of products. It involves the creation of lasting ties, the exchange of knowledge, and the expansion of opportunities for all parties involved. In this regard, since 1998, the trade, political, and cooperation relationship between Mexico and the United Kingdom had been governed by the UK-Mexico Global Agreement. But the citizens' referendum of June 2016 and the consequent activation of Article 50 of the Maastricht Treaty, it gave way to the entry into force of the European United Kingdom Withdrawal Agreement on January 31st, 2020, better known as Brexit. Later on December 15, 2020, Mexico signed a trade continuity agreement with the British government with the intention of providing certainty to the operations between the two countries, specifically to the private sector, through the maintenance of preferential access to the markets. Next slide, please. Well, as this is a preliminary document of a transitory nature, the renegotiation and the establishment of a new trade agreement between Mexico and the United Kingdom is pending. However, the proximity of the electoral cycles in both states is pushing them to pause it and postpone it until 2025. In this sense, the situation opened a favorable framework for the recounting analysis and redefinition of actions undertaken in their economic commercial relationship, specifically regarding small and medium-sized enterprises, also known as SMEs, opening a window of opportunity for the elaboration of research such as the one carried out. But why? Well, SMEs have been has been an increasingly relevant topic on the British-Mexican cooperation agenda for some years now. Their importance lies in their role as one of the major drivers of the economy as a whole. According to the World Economic Forum, at an international level, SMEs make up 90% of the business structure, in addition to generating 70% of all jobs in producing 50% of global GDP. Also, they are present all over the world, like most of the concepts analyzed in the social sciences. The definition of an SME varies, since it depends on the economic, political, and social context of each country, and even on the institution that proposes it. In Mexico, the number of workers, the amount of annual sales in millions of pesos, the maximum combined ceiling, and the economic sector in which it is inserted are taken as the base criteria for determining its certification. In that sense, the Ministry of Economy in Section 37 of Article 3 of the operating rules of the National Entrepreneur Fund states that the term is MSME, which includes SMS, refers to those individuals with business activity, tax incorporation regime, or legally constituted commercial companies, which are classified in accordance with the stratification established below. Next slide, please. Well, as you can see in your screen, the micro enterprises from all sectors, the range of number of employees is up to 10. For the small ones, into trade go from 11 to 30, and the industry and services one go from 11 to 50. And the medium one go into trade go from 31 to 100. The service into the services go from 51 to 100, and in the industry go from 51 to 250. Additionally, in Section 3 of Article 3 of the law for the development of the competitiveness of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, the Ministry of Economy, in common agreement with the Ministry of Finance and Public Credit, add to the formula the requirement to be legally constituted to counteract the phenomenon of informality in the Mexican economy. According to the National Survey on Productivity and Competitiveness of Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises applied by the National Institute of Statistics and Geography, INEGI, in 2018, in Mexico, there are more than 4 million SMEs scattered throughout the Republic, representing more than 99% of the country's business fabric. They are responsible for close to 75% of total paid employment, more than 1/3 of national production, and 42% of GDP generation. Undeniably, they are a key sector for the national economy with great potential for productivity growth. Next slide, please. Okay. Well, in the United Kingdom, the parameters for stratifying SMEs are the size of the workforce, annual turnover, and the balance sheet total. The Department for Business, Energy, and Industrial Strategy considers business with 0 to 249 employees to be SME. More specifically, in the BS Small and Medium Enterprises Action Plan 2022-2025, the UK government sets out the classifications you can see on your screens right now. Well, for medium enterprises, the staff headcount go under 250. For the small ones, go under 50, and for the micro ones, go under 10. According to the Business Population Estimates 2021, there are over 5.6 million businesses in the UK, 99% of which are SMEs. BASE highlights that their operations absorb 61% of the private sector workforce, employing 16.3 million workers, as well as being responsible for 52% of the total turnover of public limited companies established in the UK, the equivalent of £2.3 billion. Next slide, please. Well, the panorama already presented helps us to understand that the contributions of the SMEs go beyond their size. Their activities have a direct and indirect impact not only on job creation, but also on innovation, financial stability, growth, and economic competitiveness. Recognizing and supporting these business units is essential to foster sound and sustainable economic development. However, SMEs face several obstacles that often limit their ability to grow and reach their full potential. Among these challenges, lack of government support figures as one of the most significant barriers to the full development of SMEs. Even more so if they are located in another part of the world with a different culture and language. Adapting to a new set of regulations, legal and fiscal procedures, establishing financial relationships in a new country, whether trying to obtain loans or local financing, the lack of familiarity with government support programs and specific policies for SMEs, integration into the foreign business community, building a network of local contact in procuring and retaining talent are complex tasks, but above all, costly. The governments of Mexico and the United Kingdom have become aware of this. In consequence, for some time now, they have been working individually and jointly to encourage their nationals, to venture into each other's markets, as well to facilitate their entry and insertion into the dynamics of business structures. Next slide, please. In that sense, at the beginning of the 21st century, the British Department of Trade and Industry launched a promotional campaign called Mexico Make It Your Market, which lasted 3 years in order to provide an assistance and information so that the British SMEs could take advantage of the opportunities offered by the Mexican market. In 2013, as part of the Entrepreneur Week held in Mexico by the National Entrepreneur Institute, the British Embassy selected 23 Mexicans to participate in the Entrepreneurs Festival organized in Manchester by the UK Trade and Investment, now the Department for International Trade, a government agency that supports foreign companies and entrepreneurs in the establishment and expansion of their business within the United Kingdom. The goal of the event was to guide and offer experiences to those interested in starting a business in the British territory, from the legal process of formalization to efficient business management. All this through access to the expertise of people with successful stories in the British market. In the end, 5 of the 23 Mexicans were chosen to receive a full scholarship in an acceleration program. The most significant result was the emergence of Manubo, a company from Michoacán that offers digital solutions in cultural matters. Later, in 2015, a cooperation agreement was signed to strengthen the exchange between the two nations by Enrique de la Madrid Cordero, at that time the general director of the National of the PYMES, and Steve Thompson, director of the business group and member of the executive committee of the Export Credit Guarantee Department of the British Export Credit Agency. The aim was to help Mexican SMEs in their aspiration to enter the British markets as exporters, taking advantage of the strategic alliance with the British government. In 2016, Isaac Vargas Arroyo, head for foreign investment at the British Embassy, explained that when the Mexicans create a company in the United Kingdom, they have access to all the incentives and support schemes that British companies adhere to. One example of this is the investment support directory, which connects companies with specialized advisors in finance, management, consultancy, law, advertising, communications, human resources, and recruitment. In theory, the lack of distinction between foreign and local companies makes for an equitable landscape, providing greater opportunities for growth. Next slide, please. In that sense, Mexican entrepreneurs could also benefit from the simplicity of the business startup process. Compared to other countries, the incorporation of a company is a relatively simple process due to the deployment of British government measures to encourage and facilitate the business registration process. To do so, they would only need access to the internet, since the process can be carried out online. The cost is 15 to 40 pounds on average, and the response time is maximum of 24 hours. The essential requirements are to have a name and local address for the company, to be clear about the line of the business, and to have a minimum capital of £1. In addition, the British government offers Mexican SMEs assistance in the preparation of sectoral market studies, the creation of a work agenda, and the launching of the product itself, together with a soft landing service consisting of the provision of a physical office space for £149 per month for 1 year. On the other hand, during the 2018 National Entrepreneur Week, Brenda Yañez, director of the Foreign Direct Investment Unit of the British Embassy, emphasized the work of her institution in boosting the internationalization of Mexican SMEs. She mentioned that from 2015 to 2018, the embassy supported approximately 16 Mexican SMEs free of charge to land their project in British territory. Within the sector, to which these belong, are creative industries, information technology, agri-tech, food and beverage, to name a few. In 2019, the United Kingdom Export Finance appointed Diego Folino as a director for Mexico, with the purpose of providing assistance to the commercial exchange between Mexico and the United Kingdom, as well as making £4 billion available to both Mexican SMEs seeking to do business in the United Kingdom and British SMEs exporting to Mexico. The Mexican fintech sector received advice and support on best legal and administrative practices from Mexican companies with operation in London through the Sandbox Challenge 2022, an initiative organized by the UK Embassy in Mexico, the DIA, Distrito Emprendedor, and others. The event was attended by entrepreneurs with projects aimed at promoting an inclusive financial ecosystem, reducing the gender gap, and proposing green technology through financial innovation. In sum, the research showed that despite the fact that both nations have on multiple occasions expressed a willingness to cooperate on SMEs and trade issues, unfortunately, few joint initiatives have come to fruition. In practice, individual efforts have been more frequent than coordinated government support. To this day, no concrete proposal has emerged to promote direct collaboration between the governments of Mexico and the United Kingdom in favor of providing support to SMEs, unlike the case of the United States and Canada with the Committee of SMEs Affairs, also known as the SME Committee, and the Trilateral SME Dialogue as a result of Chapter 25 of Mexico-United States-Canada Treaty, TEMEC. On the other hand, the alignment of initiatives in this area is made even more difficult because there is no shared conception of SMEs, which makes them differ with respect to what determines them as such. While this is an aspect that can be addressed and refined within the framework of the negotiation process of the new trade agreement, there are other issues of great importance to be considered to ensure the long-term survival and success of Mexican SMEs that intend to focus their operations in the UK market. Next slide, please. So, as a PITAE scholar in thanks to the networking and contacts of the UNAM UK, I had the opportunity to talk to Katia Torres de la Rocha, a Mexican entrepreneur in the UK and one of the biggest promoters of Mexico in Europe. But who is Katia? Katia is the founder and CEO of MexGrocer, the first online store selling Mexican products in the UK. Currently, she has managed to position herself as a bridge between the British market and small and medium Mexican producers, thanks to her experience and knowledge of the British industry. The interview with Katia helped me glimpse a broader picture of the situation by rescuing a perspective based on direct experience in the British business field, which allowed me to identify three main problems faced by the Mexican SMEs in the UK, in addition to illustrating the need for and importance of international cooperation in the field of SMEs. Next slide, please. One of the problems is the lack of government support. In the past, a part of the work was assumed by the London office of ProMéxico, a trust of the Ministry of Economy established in 2007 during the government of Felipe Calderón, focused on the promotion of export activity and the internationalization of Mexican companies through legal, technical, and commercial advice on the advantages of international treaties, as well as the organization and support of business participation in missions, fairs, and trade exhibitions held abroad. But after strong criticism regarding its efficiency in meeting needs, in 2019, the Ministry of Economy issued a decree to extinguish it. In consequence, embassies were forced to fill the vacuum generated in the Mexican embassy in the United Kingdom was no exception. The problem lies in the limited resources available to the institutions, both in terms of budget and people. This hampers their ability to provide individualized assistance to all SMEs that need it. The embassy, headed by Josefa González y Blanco Ortiz Mena, is composed of 10 Mexican representatives, while there is an economic affairs and promotion unit, there is no specialized service structure to address the diversity and complexity of SMEs requirements, since a small technology company does not have the same areas of concern as a medium-sized food and beverage company. Next slide, please. Another challenge faced by Mexican SMEs when entering the United Kingdom is the insufficient coverage and dissemination of government programs or training on market research. For example, those offered by the Global Economic Intelligence Units of the Ministry of Economy. This may be due to several reasons, Firstly, the absence of a register of Mexican SMEs in the UK, then the inability to formulate a clear and well-defined communication strategy, and thirdly, the inefficient coordination between different government agencies. Sorry. As a result, the dissemination of available information and services has been hampered, hindering the potential participation of SMEs. Awareness of British consumers' expectations regarding the correct design, packaging, size, and functionality of the products is a crucial point that has a direct impact on companies' chances of success. Therefore, the lack of preparation leaves Mexican SMEs without the fundamental tools to carry out adequate strategies and create value propositions, diminishing both their chances of acceptance and their level of competitiveness in the UK market. Next slide, please. Based on Mex Grocers' experience, networking is fundamental. However, the frequency with which the Mexican government encourages events in the United Kingdom focus on the creation of connection platforms for the SMEs of its nationals is low or even a non-existent. The few spaces achieved have been organized by other cooperation agents, such as MEXCC, and Mexico Day, Gala Dinner and Awards, or Mexico Week. The linkage and collaboration meetings provide an environment where companies can work together on common projects, build business relationships, share resources and knowledge while exploring joint business opportunities. Actions that make a difference in their ability to thrive in a business environment different from the domestic one. Without those, Mexican SMEs suffer from isolation, impeding the flow of information business and even the cohesion, the collaboration in their development. This situation, exacerbated by the historical fragmentation of the community due to the lack of willingness to organize, provide solidarity and guidance among Mexicans themselves, has prevented the empowerment of the diaspora in the UK. The research identified different areas of opportunity in which, through initiatives generated by international cooperation between Mexico and the United Kingdom, a more encouraging scenario for SMEs can be promoted. It is in this regard, my research through the PITAE program offered a proposal inspired by Chapter 25 of the MEC. Next slide, please. Well, their research suggested that in the process of negotiating the trade agreement between Mexico and the United Kingdom, the idea of creating a joint commission to address the needs of SMEs in both countries could be promoted. The objective would be to stimulate collaboration, exchange, and cooperation between Mexican and British SMEs. Facilitating their access to resources, business opportunities, and information on markets. The commission will be composed of representatives from the government, chambers of commerce, business associations, academic institutions, and relevant organizations from both countries. They would meet at least once a year to identify challenges, exchange information, develop joint initiatives, monitor and evaluate the progress of measures aimed at SMEs. And the activities could include conducting regular market research to identify business opportunities and specific challenges faced by business units in Mexico and in the UK, as well as establishing advisory and training programs in areas such as internationalization, for example, business plan development support, digital marketing, access to finance, both public and private, business management, and regulatory compliance, for example, certifications. Next slide, please. In a complementary manner, each year it could encourage the holding of events focused on providing networking spaces to facilitate the establishment of contacts, collaboration, and strategic alliances. It is recommended to hold several small-scale events in different cities in both countries, for example, Guadalajara, Monterrey, Manchester, and Birmingham, aimed at different different industry sectors, but one large-scale event in Mexico City and London. Such meeting could be named UK Business Connect, growing on the other side of the Atlantic. Joint collaboration offers the possibility of taking advantage of economies of scale, sharing resources, knowledge, or an experience. In other words, it means that the costs associated with the implementation of programs and services to support SMEs can be shared between both parties, reducing the financial burden for each state, especially for Mexico. In this sense, the Commission could facilitate the development of mechanisms to provide financial, technical, technological, and human resources to support the growth and expansion of both markets. In an effort to combat misinformation in both the Mexican and British business environment, the Commission would implement promotion and dissemination campaigns focused on publicizing business services and opportunities, as well as raising awareness among SMEs on the benefits of bilateral cooperation. To this end, effective communication channels will be generated, including publicly accessible websites containing useful SME information. Also, the treaty should seek to eliminate trade barriers in the British-Mexican trade flow. The Commission would be provided with schemes for dispute resolution and attention to specific concerns raised by SMEs in their day-to-day operations. In addition, the Commission could establish a directory of mentors and business experts made up of successful entrepreneurs, such as, for example, Katia Torres, business consultants, academics, and professionals with experience in both the British and Mexican markets. Therefore, the proposal would provide a solid institutional framework that would not only contribute to Mexico-UK cooperation, but would also represent a more efficient and effective way of addressing the needs of SMEs, as compared to what has been done for some time with the implementation of individual measures. Finally, it can be affirmed from the research that the British government has an advantage over the Mexican government on the issue. With the Commission, Mexico could take advantage of shared resources, for example, databases, market research, subject matter experts, and technological tools that might otherwise be out of reach. The Commission would contribute to the development of that segment of the business fabric in both states and to national prosperity and economic growth. Next slide, please. As part of my conclusions, historical cooperation between Mexico and the United Kingdom has been multifaceted, encompassing diverse political, economic, cultural, and social aspects. Over the years, both countries have maintained strong diplomatic relations marked by both moments of strategic collaborations and period of challenges and tensions. However, despite occasional differences, the relationship between Mexico and the United Kingdom has evolved into a partnership that has generated substantial progress in different areas, for example, economic and trade. Also, international circumstances have allowed the bilateral relationship to grow in economic terms, while at the same time, the activities of Mexican and British SMEs are pushing to improve the process of cooperation, commercial exchange, and respective legislations. Unfortunately, governmental efforts have been insufficient, so much that the gaps have been filled by chambers of commerce, business associations, and other private sector actors. The deficiency in the coordination and harmonization of priorities in the government's business agenda has hindered the international exponential development, organization, and exploitation of the potential of SMEs in both economies. This unilateral approach is a clear contradiction to the principles of free trade and equity. In this sense, the British government has promoted an image as a defender of free market principles, presenting itself to the world as a partner committed to open trade and free exchange. But the reality behind this narrative is much more complex, and in the case of the SMEs in Congress. Overcoming this requires a genuine commitment to mutual cooperation involving a holistic view of the phenomenon. Recognition and support from both the sending and receiving governments are essential for SMEs to transcend borders and adopt strategies that allow them to take full advantage of foreign trade opportunities by joining global value chains and establishing alliances that straighten their production and marketing lines while making a significant contribution to the world markets. The proposal to create a joint commission focused on meeting the needs of SMEs contributes to achieving what I've been mentioning. However, it is essential to pay special attention to subgroups, for example, women, youth, indigenous communities, and members of the LGBTQ+ community, since SMEs are not a homogeneous group. Consideration of this ensures inclusive approach with the potential to effectively respond to the diverse requirements and challenges faced by the different actors involved in the business structure. Next slide, please. Finally, it is worth mentioning that cooperation in the field of SMEs not only benefits the companies involved, but also strengthens the ties between Mexico and the UK, making the relationship between the two more balanced and mutually beneficial. As both countries continue to face challenges and opportunities in a globalized world, Mexico-UK collaboration will continue to be essential to building a more prosperous and equitable future for its citizens and for the international community as a whole. Thank you for your attention.
Muchas gracias, Nayla. Sin duda ha sido una investigación muy completa. Bueno, nos quedamos un poco cortos de tiempo, entonces recuerden que esta presentación se queda en las redes sociales del Centro de Estudios Mexicanos UNAM Reino Unido, tanto en Facebook como en YouTube, para consultas posteriores. Igual si hay comentarios los pueden dejar en el chat y se los hacemos llegar a Nayla para tener respuesta. Y bueno, reitero mis felicitaciones por la conclusión de tu trabajo.
Igualmente de mi parte, Nayla, muchísimas felicidades. Es una investigación muy útil y muy completa que nos encantará poder analizar posteriormente. Desgraciadamente ya no hay tiempo para poderla comentar, pero bueno, quienes han estado aquí podrán expresar sus preguntas a través de cuando el video se publique en YouTube. A ver, el doctor Adrián es tu asesor, ¿verdad? Sí, a él sí le tenemos que dar la palabra. Nada más le pediría, doctor, que sea un poquito rápido. Nos da muchísimo gusto que nos acompañe. Adelante.
Buenos días, buenas tardes por allá. Nada más felicitar a Nayla de esta excelente presentación y que sin duda esto contribuirá para su proceso de titulación y también como un gran legado de la investigación de las relaciones comerciales de Gran Bretaña y México. Nada más es un ligero comentario. Muchas gracias por la invitación.
Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. Gracias. Perfecto. Bueno, sí, también con felicitaciones, congrats, ¿no? De parte de Mariana Márquez Fuentes. En fin, muchas felicidades, Nayla. Muchas gracias. Gracias a todas las personas que nos han acompañado y bueno, que pasen un buen día. Hasta luego.